In the back, come find a chair. There's plenty up here in the front. So I'm really excited about this whole track today because we're gonna get to build off of Hannah Shank's presentation, and for those of you guys that were in town yesterday, our workshop yesterday afternoon. So this is the first of 4 sessions on innovation that I'm really pleased about. Today this session is innovation from coast to coast, and so our vision behind this was let's get a bunch of cities together from all sorts of different places, literally each coast. We got 3 coasts representing today, and have them tell kind of their perspective, share their stories, and talk innovation. So I'm going to stop talking and hand it off to Stephanie Wade from Bloomberg Cities, who's going to be moderating today, and I'll let her kind of introduce the panel or give them their names and stuff. So thank you.
Hey, everybody. Good morning. All right. Moderate claps. Do I clap? Do I not clap? It's all right. It's early. That's all right. So my name is Stephanie Wade, and I am a lead for innovation teams at Bloomberg Philanthropies. Our innovation teams, you heard Hannah mention them in her keynote this morning, and they are teams that we fund and coach who are embedded in city halls that their whole job is to work on solving problems in the city using innovation methods. And I just couldn't be more excited to be here with them today and get a chance to highlight the good work that these 3 teams are doing. One logistical note before I introduce our teams. We recognize that user experience in innovation is incredibly important. Now, if we sit down in the chairs, we are going to be at your height. We are very happy to stand, but we just want to take a poll. Stand or sit? Stand? Done. All right. We may half sit on this table. We're not sure it's going to hold our weight, so experimentation. No. All right, so let's bring up Adria Finch. Adria is the director of our innovation team in Syracuse. We have Terrance Smith from Mobile, our director, and Babb, Anchorage. So it is a coast-to-coast effort for sure. So we're going to start off pretty normal Q&A. How we doing? Yeah? All right. We can lean. We're going to continue the conversation from this morning. I think my favorite quote from Hannah's speech this morning was, technology is the easy part of innovation. It's everything else that's hard. And these teams work so hard in their cities. They have been doing this for years, building an innovation capacity in their cities, working on the most challenging problems that the cities have. And I have firsthand seen their blood, sweat, and tears, and in some cases probably caused some of that. But we're going to start off. Oh, I also want to acknowledge that we have other iTeam folks in the room. So while we're highlighting these 3 teams, we actually have 25 innovation teams around the world. And we also have a new program through our Bloomberg Harvard City Leadership Program called the Innovation Track. And we have some of our representatives. We have 13 cities in that program right now in 5 countries. And I see Maggie from Arlington, Texas. I see Jason from Sioux Falls. Is there anybody else from the Innovation Track here? And woohoo! Hey, Charlotte. Thanks for coming. Well, I was going to get to the I-team. So we have Jersey City. Who else is an I-team? I see Durham is here. Detroit. Yes? Memphis? All right. We got Baltimore. We've got Austin, Texas. All right. So we have lots of people in the room you can talk to, including our panelists and everyone else in the room. If you're curious about the innovation work going on, please find them after. So we're going to kick it off. First, kind of softball question to you all. So tell us a little bit about the skill sets that are on your team, kind of the different kinds of people you have, and how you've used those skill sets on some of your, maybe 1 or 2 of your really big problems.
So the skill sets in Syracuse have kind of evolved over time. We really started by focusing on kind of project management skill sets. We had a graphic design skill set, and then we had a data analysis skill set. We found a lot of value in the data analysis, so we've actually expanded that skill set. But then we've gone through trainings with human-centered design with Bloomberg. And although we don't actually have a full-blown, I went to college to be a designer, that's now something that we really look for in hiring people. But honestly, the biggest skill set that I think we hire for and that we utilize is just somebody who can get things done. So I like to call them an entrepreneur, somebody who can manage projects, who can deal with lots of different personalities, who can just get the job done. And that's really important because you have to work across silos in government and different organizations and with a variety of partners, and you just have a bunch of different puzzle pieces that are coming together, and you have to really figure out how to make those happen. So although kind of those hard skills are definitely embedded in our team, the one thing that I would say that I would encourage you to look for if you're trying to find people who can do this innovation work is just somebody who's ambitious and willing to pull all the pieces together and just roll up their sleeves and get dirty and get the job done.
All right, and so in our team, we have an actual designer. So we have an industrial designer who has been a joy to work with. We have so you have me. I have degrees in anthropology, sociology, communications, and then a master's degree in instructional design and development. So whatever you want to call me. And then we have a data scientist who is an absolute dream. He makes everything that we do real and actionable. And then the next level we have a project manager, and for us, we wanted to ensure that we want to hire people on our team who we clash with, but who also has the temperament to come back around during lunch and after hours. And so we will clash all day inside of the office, but that is how you get the really good ideas, and we flatten the hierarchy. So whereas I am the director, when it comes to work, we're all on the same line. And so any one of them could vote me out of whatever it is that we want to do, but that is to ensure that my ego is in check and everyone else is in check.
Hi, thanks so much for showing up for this presentation. In Anchorage, we have 4 people. We have a design strategist, so someone trained in service design and human-centered design, innovation strategist, and a data analyst, and then myself. And I think some of the skills, just being able to work with people and gaining trust. I've learned a lot from my team about putting in the work to just show up at departments we work with and just get a regular cadence. I like to come in and do things kind of quickly, but really gaining people's trust, I think, is huge in this innovation work. Adria's Syracuse team, they went out and filled potholes with teams, like really showing up with the people that are doing the work and getting their trust, I think, is a key. And then just people willing to collaborate and try new things.
Before you pass that back, what's an innovation strategist?
Oh, innovation strategist. We had a project manager position, and we kind of tweaked that. Our project manager became the director of IT, which is great. So we have people within our team joining the rest of the city and bringing those skills to those positions. An innovation strategist, helping some of the outreach, but also doing some project management, but trying to figure out how we foster a culture of innovation in Anchorage. So how we get some of the stuff we're doing and additional partners and how we spread that out there. Alaska is really big on fishing, so we kind of don't want to just give people innovation fish. We want to teach them how to innovation fish. So I mean, ultimately, it's such a luxury to have an I team, but ultimately, I think a lot of these jobs, you want to work yourself out of a job. So like in 10 years, I don't want there to be this I team that's separate. I want all the departments to have the tools, constantly learning, innovate, just doing amazing stuff.
So when you first started the I team, and Brendan was kind of mentioning that they kind of changed it up. I'd be curious about when you started, the skill sets that you were missing and the ones that you've added and why.
So I think the biggest things that we were missing at first were trainings on how to do proper engagement. So I take a lot of pride because within the past year and a half, 2 years, I've really changed the way that we do public meetings. In my experience, nobody likes public meetings. You hear the same voices over and over again. A lot of times you will get off track. And this actually all came because of our innovation work. We go out into the community. We try to understand how specific challenges touch the lives of people. And we realized that we would go out and we'd come back with all sorts of feedback and ideas, but it wasn't always helpful. So we actually go through this whole process where we have ideation sessions where we ask people to help us generate ideas to solve problems. And our first year or two when we did it, we'd be like, yeah, we've got like 500 or 600 ideas. This is great. We're totally going to crush it. And we were able to come up with great portfolios of initiatives to roll out. But what we really were, when we started to do the more targeted, focused engagement sessions, that they were often open house, or they are open house and workshop style, we realized that we were hearing more voices. The voices that we were hearing, it was much more targeted towards the specific issue that we were asking for feedback on, and the ideas that we were getting were better. And so that with our most recent kind of big portfolio of work that we were able to roll out, we know we're confident that the initiatives are going to be will have a decent impact. We have metrics that we use to measure the progress. But the other thing is, I think we were able to, this is the first time that I think we really had a disruptive innovation. A lot of times the work that we do, it's kind of incremental, sometimes common sense, which those are really important things, and I love it. But if you're really able to start to engage people in a different way and get that quality feedback, that's when you're going to make the really big, sexy, disruptive innovations. And I think so that engagement, that kind of qualitative research, that was like the real skill set that we were missing when we started. And we've been working to slowly embed that into our team operations.
All right, so over the 3 years that I've been on the team, we kind of evolve frequently. So to kind of get to where we needed to be, people get burnt out. Some people they rise above their station, so they want to leave, and then other people are hungry to get on the team. And so when we started out without the capacity of a quantitative person. So having that data analyst coming on with our team helped us explode tremendously across departments, because now we're not going into departments making decisions or suggesting things based on what we felt or what the person with the loudest voice said in the room. So I'm from Mobile, and we're a traditional city. We're about 300 years old. And so we make all the decisions based on what we've always done and what always feels right. Even when you show people that it's not working, they still want to do it that way. And so for us, I'll give you a quick example. For us bringing in our data analysts, the other day we had a guy from Parks and Rec, and he's been operating his own way for about 20 years. And so he came in, he said, hey, what do you guys do here? I said, so we solve government problems. He said, you guys don't like government guys at all. I said, it's because we're not government guys at all. We're here moonlighting. And so he came in, right? So he saw all the words on the paper. He said, so, and I give full credit to Stephanie for this one because she helped us out tremendously. He said, how do we know that you guys aren't just taking words from yourselves and place them on these sticky notes? And so I said, well, it's funny that you asked that. So I took him over to the note, and I said, see this note and see that number? That number is a date. That first, and those two letters, that's the first and the last initial. And then that coordinate on the side is a location. And so we can tell you exactly who said what, when, where, and how, where they came from, and the context of the conversation. But then we took that and we passed it over to our data scientists, and we were able to back it up with hard data. And so when these people are seeing this now, they're having a much greater respect for what we're saying, because they know that it's just not us saying this. We can tell you where it came from, when it came, how they said it, why they said it, and backing it up with data that comes directly from their operation, not from our operation.
When Anchorage started out, we had a design strategist, so human-centered design, and a project manager. And then we were trying to, I have some background in data, but we were trying to get a data analyst and bring those skills on. And then Emily Bokar, who's our innovation strategist, also we're trying to evolve into, so we're super lucky to have this Bloomberg grant for 3 years. But now we're trying to evolve into post-grant. And we've done some work, we've had some successes, so people are coming to us. In the beginning, you're kind of this weird office, and you're telling people what you're doing and you're focused on stuff. But now people are coming to us, and Emily's been great in terms of figuring out how we do intake, or how we're gonna, because I'm horrible. I say yes to everything. I'm excited about all the problems, but you really can't do that. It's not sustainable. So now we're trying to be more strategic. So those are some of the skills we're bringing on now in terms of strategy. And then data, we have a data analyst now. And I think one challenge in this work is getting good data. People will say they have the data. You really need to see it on a screen, or see it, because they don't often have the data. And it's really hard to do some of the metrics or measures to know if something works better or not, to actually hold yourself accountable of, oh, this is super cool, but does it actually work better?
Awesome. So let's dive into some of the meat of how you've applied these skill sets, qualitative, quantitative data design, behavioral economics, in some sense. And share an example of a project, a really tough one that you've tackled, and the challenges in that, and how you overcame them to have success.
You get to start.
Oh, I get to start. Well, we're doing our portfolios a lot on food insecurity. We started out on economic opportunities, super small project, increasing economic opportunities for people, and then kind of narrowed down to food security. So we work with WIC, the WIC department, which is nutritional stuff for women, infants, and children. They are part of the Anchorage Health Department, so they're part of the city. But then we also work with SNAP at the state level, and Food Bank of Alaska. And some of the challenges we have is just, you want broader impact, but then you're working with partners that you don't really have any control over. So working with the state sometimes is a challenge. They wanna help, but they don't always have the capacity or the speed, or just getting regulations changed or moving stuff forward. So I would say that is one challenge in terms of, someone was saying that you wanted to work with people that your mayor could fire, which is kind of a harsh way to say stuff, but we have an incredibly supportive mayor, but having that support to kind of move things along and moving at different paces. But it's always amazing doing the human-centered design, interviewing people. Patrick and Ben are on my team. They went and volunteered at a food pantry week after week, and then interviewed people. We gave them like $15 grocery cards, but got these great interviews. And the qualitative data always surprises you. The greatest part about the job is just being surprised by stuff you didn't know, or you had an intuition and you were completely wrong, and just opening yourself up to learning stuff all the time. I'm all over the map on that thing. You're going to get way better answers as this goes to the right here.
So I would like to share my failures, right? Because we could talk about successes all the time. You can follow those on Instagram and Twitter and all of that. But I will say something about our success. So we went from our blight numbers. They went from 1625 the first year to 1165 the second year to 891 this year. And so it looks like a huge success, right? And so I saw those numbers, and I was just telling Stephanie, I said, "Oh shit, we just took down blight tremendously." And so most people are like, "Yes, let's get the newspaper out here, let's celebrate, let's high five and share handshakes and hugs in front of everybody." And so then I get a call from the historic commission. They say, "Terrance, what are you guys doing? You are tearing down all the houses." And so I said, "Yes, but these people are happy." And so what we realized though was that, even those people are happy, and that we did our due diligence. We gave them the blight list. We told them that we were going to be removing properties. They had everything they needed. They didn't have a timeline for when we were going to move. And so government moves at a very slow pace on their own, but now they're moving at our pace, and we only have about 27 months left in our mayoral time. So we're moving faster. And so the city wasn't prepared for that speed, and so we sat down and talked with those guys on how do we get them to have some time. And so we created a plan where they now will gain 10 points on their blight list, on their blight score, if they have a real plan with money attached to it and a developer. And so then that was a way to kind of mitigate the risk of losing more of our history, now a severe failure on our behalf. We tackled blight, and so now we're moving blighted structures off the list, and we're renovating houses at an alarming rate. That's great. But before we were able to renovate houses at an alarming rate, we had this huge issue where we were not able to get our permits in a timely manner. Huge problem. And so we had a I-team member who was on the team. She was a senior project manager. Somebody thought it might be a great idea to create an ally across the street in the building department if we sent her over to become the senior director of what is now Build Mobile, which is permitting, planning, and zoning, and inspections. She went over. We quickly learned that she was not a full I-team member. And so she went over, she said, I have all the secrets to fight these guys. I know how to fight them. I know how to slow them down. I know what to do. And she was successful, too. She was really, really good at it. But we're not losers. And so what we quickly realized was that we had made a vital mistake in believing that she was an ally in the goals that we were trying to accomplish, and she went across the street. And so we stopped, put our heads together, and realized that even though we've lost about 2 years on this whole thing, the citizens themselves, they still need us to complete this goal. And so we told the mayor to consolidate all the departments under one master head. And so we brought in the guy who was the head architect, head engineer for the state, LDOT. He came in, he put it all back together. And so now we're starting to see some movement. It's going really well. He's only working 20 hours a week, so it saved us some money. But that was a huge failure on our behalf.
I want to keep building upon this idea of partners and the people that you work with, because I think that is honestly one of the biggest keys of having a successful innovation initiative or program. So you, to some degree, cannot force people to work with you. Your mayor may come in and say, hey, Commissioner of DPW, you're now going to be working with these folks who are going to change initiatives or the way that you do things. But if they're not fully bought in and vested, then something's going to fall apart down the road. And so we launched a bunch of infrastructure initiatives with a mayor a couple years ago, and then we had a mayoral transition. And with that, many of the staff at Public Works also left in the administration. But they were only working with us because the mayor told them they had to. The commissioner would say things to me occasionally like, oh, yeah, the I team, or he'd introduce us as the I team. I stands for idiot. But we did really good work with them. But because we didn't have that full buy-in at the commissioner level, it didn't really get pushed down all the way. So when a superintendent left, even though he was an ally, it didn't make it down to the people that are actually doing the work, the boots on the ground. And so for the past year or so, I've really been working with the new leadership in DPW to get the work embedded, the initiatives that we had already developed back up and running. The other thing that's really important is, so we all have kind of priority areas where it's like, okay, we're going to spend a good chunk of time focusing on one area. I would wager that we also all have side hustles, so random projects that come our way. And I've really enjoyed those. First of all, it's always nice to have something different to work on for a little bit. But those are the people that are coming to us and saying, hey, I want help with blank. They're vested. They want to learn the skills. And so that's, I think, a real opportunity to start to push some of the skills that we have on our team into other people, so into other departments, and so we can teach them and show them how to utilize different tools. It's shocking just to learn how many people can't put together a project plan. That's something that I take for granted, but it's actually figuring out, okay, what are the steps that you need to get a project done? And so even just teaching that skill set is something. Or this is not a major success, but it did make a big difference. Our permitting office was pretty disorganized. And what would happen is they would issue a permit, and then it would go live on somebody's desk or get buried in a pile, and then somebody would come to pick it up, and they'd spend 20 minutes looking for the permit. So this wasn't, a big fancy project, but we're like, okay, we're getting you shelves and we're getting you bins, and all of the done permits are going to go here. And that made a big difference in the way that they operate. It made a big difference for constituents. So I think you have to take a problem and look at it. And it can be a simple solution. It can be a checklist. It can be organizing a space. We did have one project, Stephanie mentioned behavioral economics, that was pretty easy and brought in $1.5 million in tax revenue, where we have a problem where people don't pay their taxes. And now if you're behind on your taxes, there's a certain amount of time you have to wait, and then you get a McCann notice. It's, I don't know, some legal document that we couldn't alter. We tried to alter it. Our law department told us no. They do tell us no relatively frequently. But so we created this new notification to send out to constituents who hadn't paid their taxes to property owners. And we actually conducted a full experiment to see if this was actually going to be useful. So condition 1 was people didn't get a letter. Condition 2 was they got this new complimentary letter telling them that they have to pay their taxes and that they're delinquent. And then condition 3 was they got the letter in an envelope, and on the envelope we hand wrote, "You must read this, period, Martha." Martha is our Deputy Commissioner of Finance / tax collector. And we just sent them out, and all these people paid. And the letter was successful in and of itself, but having that handwritten note on the envelope also made a difference. So we brought in an additional $1.5 million in tax revenue. Now every 6 months we do have to handwrite on lots of letters, but we're trying to figure out a way to get around that. If not, it's a really good intern project. So I think the biggest thing is just thinking creatively and not being afraid to try something that's even just really small and incremental.
So these teams are built to tackle really challenging problems, and they've started talking about snippets of them. I'd like you to talk about the importance of a portfolio of initiatives, right? That when we tackle big problems, there's not one solution to homelessness. There's not one solution to reducing crime. And so these teams, I just love how hard they think about short and long term. Like Adria was just saying, kind of incremental, quick, easy wins all the way to the bold initiatives. Could you just give an example of what a portfolio of those initiatives might look like? And in Brendan's case, they haven't quite gotten there with some of their work, but maybe you can just talk about how you're thinking about it, because I know you're in the final stages of prototyping and testing.
So most recently, we had a priority area where we were focusing on housing stability. And when I say that, specifically the mayor was interested in reducing transiency, or the number of times people move. So in Syracuse, 1 out of 4 households move once a year. That's a lot. Just think how disruptive it is for you to move. And that impacts quality of life. It impacts the kids going to school. There's a whole host of things. And so we spent about a year going through an entire process to figure out how to address this. And in order to come up with the full portfolio, what we did kind of in the beginning was really take some time to understand the problem. And we identified 3 specific kind of challenge statements or buckets or objectives that needed to be addressed. And now it's going to challenge me to remember what they all are. One is about the quality of housing. One was specifically about eviction. And one was, I'm going to forget what the other one is. It'll come back to me. It was about information, and people didn't know where they could go to get information. And then within each of those, we had different activities to help generate ideas and figure out what we wanted to move forward. But once we had those ideas, we actually had to figure out, okay, what actually makes sense to kind of partner together and move forward in an initiative. And so what we ended up doing is actually we use a kind of a 2x2 matrix where we map impact and feasibility of the different initiatives, and then we can figure out which ones kind of make the best impact. I think some folks call it how, now, wow, pow, or something like that. Anyway, is that it? Okay. So the way we do it is we literally write the different ideas on Post-its, and we have this basically a graph, and we put them up on different places and where we think it'll make a big difference. And we also talk through like who would the partners be? Do we have buy-in? And it really helps us to whittle down a good portfolio. This time we actually really focused on also identifying partners outside of City Hall. In the past, we've naturally gravitated to working with folks. Was it Hannah who said that the mayor could fire? Was that one? Yeah, Brendan. That not that they have, but we tried to really work with partners this time as well, and we identified those quick wins, and I also identified kind of longer, more disruptive innovations as well. So we have things in this portfolio ranging from, in in the grand scheme of things probably won't make that big of a difference, but we thought why not go for it, is, okay, how can we recognize a landlord for actually being a good landlord? And that's as simple as like doing a social media post about them and their property, and they get a nice letter from the mayor. Is that probably going to reduce, evictions or reduce transiency? Maybe not, but who knows? So we have metrics to track it. And then we also have kind of like easier things. So one of the things that we're doing is trying to increase the participation in our rental registry, which is about 30% right now. That way we can ensure that housing quality is up to par. And then we also have a bigger project that involves like a crowdfunding platform for housing related emergencies. And so by having this kind of wide like range of projects, we're able to have those quick wins to at least show like, hey, look, we're doing something, gain buy-in. But we also have a longer term plan to actually really push the needle in creative ways.
And their pilot for all of this has actually reduced evictions by 75% in the city already. Amazing.
And so our format for creating our portfolio is not as robust as Adria's, but on the front end, what we were able to do was able to create this this problem map inside of our office to show there's a centralized problem of population decline. And so then everywhere, we'll say the primary ring, the secondary ring, and the tertiary ring, and all of those things attached in some way. So we only choose side projects based on how they connect to the primary goal. And so when the mayor comes into the office and he says, hey, now I want you guys to look at this as your quick win, we go to the map and figure out how can we push them back to one of those rings, and how can they add value to what we've already been working on. And we did that because we had such an issue with our Build Mobile project that we wanted to not lose that, but we wanted to be able to take where the mayor wanted to go and create some value out of it. And so our portfolio ranges from blight to permitting and inspections to Parks and Rec to police and community relations, and to now 311, and also procurement. And so we work with the Minority and Women-Owned Business Center to ensure that the process is moving freely and that we have the information. And so that is going really well. In our Parks and Rec project, which the team is currently working on right now, it's one of our better projects and more fun and light. I say light, but it took like a year to get them where they should be. We first walked into Parks and Rec. Parks and Rec was a disaster, but we wanted to be able to impact the crime rate with the teenagers. And so we realized that we couldn't go out there and police, and we couldn't force the police to do anything else. So we decided to go into Parks and Rec and going directly into the people. What we realized, though, was upon walking into the system was that I was met with the frontline staff, and they said, "Oh, you're coming to be the new Parks and Rec director? Well, we're already 3-0." I said, 3-0? What does that mean? They said, "Well, we beat 3 directors, and you'll be the 4th." And so I said, well, actually, I'm not your new director, and I only have about 2 years here, so I'll be happy to take you guys with me if you want to go. And so we came in with that lighthearted approach. It took us about a year to find a director because I realized that was a real thing. They were getting rid of directors at a rapid rate. And so we had to figure out the characteristics of those directors that they got rid of. We had to go back and look at the resumes, and we found a director that fit what they needed and what they wanted. And so she has enabled us to go back into our skill set and our bags and look at everything, how we went wrong, bring everybody back. And so she is directly involved with everything that they create, from the vision statement to the mission statement to the service delivery. She has had them in office, and for us, it has enabled us to rethink how we define our office. So now we have this camera that's directly over our workstation, to show how different groups work together and to show how inside of our portfolio, the actual work that is taking place.
Anchorage's portfolio, I actually owe Stephanie a slide deck of the prototypes that we're going to do. What? Yeah. So, but we did a lot of research on food insecurity, and I think having a centralized portfolio of things that are easier or harder also positions you well when opportunities occur. Like Patrick, our design strategist, he got a chance to meet with the state on some new online forms we're doing, which was on Monday. So he delayed his flight down here. But we were ready to go. So having a portfolio of different things you can work on. Some of the stuff we're looking at is people using Snap and Wick to online order, like Instacart. You can order groceries. We're trying to figure out that's a more ambitious project and requires some other pieces. Also, transportation was a big barrier for people to go to WIC appointments or shopping. So we're looking at like Medicaid. If you're on Medicaid, all the appointments you go to WIC, you can get free taxis. But we're also interested in Lyft and Uber. So those are bigger things. And then other stuff I'm learning is you can only kind of move at the speed of trust. So getting these small wins with the departments, like we talked to the staff about changing the form. We redesigned a form, which to Adria's thing won't solve hunger necessarily, but the staff is much happier with the form, and that quick win like built some trust, and so I think you can build these things together, and having a wide range in your portfolio lets you be ready to seize opportunities when they come. Now the state's like, hey, we like your form. Not only can you do it in Anchorage, you can do it statewide. So that was a win for us on Monday, and that trust will allow us to move some of our other stuff. And then one other thing that I wrestle with is Emily does a great job of saying we need to talk to the departments and see what they're excited about. How will this be sustainable? Like we don't want it to be a mere, this is a flavor of the week and then we go away and it dies. But staff are often under-resourced and overworked. So they don't want to sign on to something, but like you showing up to be, hey, we're going to do innovation. And you're like, that's just more work for me. Like we appreciate you're trying to help us, but I'm already maxed out. But at the same time, you want to do disruptive stuff. You want to do what the mayor wants. So finding that place in between where you're like, hey, let's do hoverboards or let's make something easy. Trying to find something where people are pushing themselves, because my job is really to kind of be a pain in the butt and disrupt people, but it might just die right after that. So trying to get those wins and kind of build stuff together, it's kind of like a Jenga thing. Like it could fall apart at any point, but it starts to get more and more stable, and it's amazing. Everyone in my city really wants to help people, and if you can just give them the space to change things and the support, they do amazing things.
That was great. Thank you. I'm going to do one more question, and we'll make it kind of lightning answer speed, and then we're going to open it up to you all because your questions are something we're really interested in. These, again, they have the luxury of having our Bloomberg Philanthropies grant and a lot of coaching and teaching. They're amazing in their own right and have earned everything they've gotten for sure. But I guess I'd ask what your advice is, like maybe the number one, maybe two, again, trying to keep it short, things that you would recommend to anybody sitting in this room who doesn't have a full innovation in their team. Maybe they are the lone chief innovation person, or maybe they're just really interested in innovation and don't really know where to start. What advice would you give to them in order for them to kind of start jump-starting innovation in their city?
The biggest thing is talk to the ground level staff, the actual boots on the ground doing the work. I was surprised, especially when I was working with infrastructure related departments, how many people said, well, nobody's ever asked my opinion before. And they had great ideas that they thought could be implemented. So start there and then empower them and give them the tools to actually get the job done. Make sure that people have autonomy over their work, because not only will they actually make change, but it'll probably improve organizational culture as well.
So I will say keep in mind that creativity is the basis for innovation, and that then innovation is the launching pad for results, right? It's the turning point for your results. And before you can get to any of that, you have to build psychological trust and safety with the people around you. For us, that means finding unlikely partners, people that would not likely be brought to the table because they give you a level of information that you would not have been prepared for. But that also means preparing yourself to deal with their anger for not being brought to the table early on.
Yeah, I would say letters are a good way to start. Just improving letters. We had just a quick lunch training, and we brought in different departments and had them compete. But letting people know they can change stuff. There's a lot of urban myths of like we can't change anything on this because it's all required by code. In the first 6 months you're there, if you're new to government like me, you're allowed to ask questions without seeming like a jackass. Like you're just like, oh, really? Can you show me where that code is? After 6 months, they're like, yeah, I know what you're up to. But really just letting people change stuff. We did a treasury letter kind of similar to Adria's, and I had people from treasury departments on 2 different teams. I'll make this fast, but they were trash talking between each other in the groups. And I'm like, okay, this training is working now. And they made changes, and we got $1 million extra revenue. But they got excited about changing stuff, and then they just changed a bunch of other stuff. Like just letting people know they can change stuff and that they'll be rewarded, and the mayor's there, and there's attention. People, like the people closest to the problem, know how to solve the problem best. And if you just get out of the way, and also never take credit yourself. Like when the department does it and they get a win, celebrate the hell out of that win. When it goes south, I can just take it right across the face because I have a weird Harry Potter title and Chief Innovation Officer. You're expected to fail. I'm allowed more failures than the average frontline person. So just provide cover for people.
That's excellent, Harry Potter. Thank you. All right, let's turn it over to you guys, and I guess I'm going to run some mics in my heels. All right. Woo-woo.
Thanks for doing this, guys. This question's for Ben, and you guys can jump in if you guys could help out as well. You're talking about meaningful... Oh, sorry. I'm Zach Mans from the city of Irving. Does that sound good on the mic? Or Texas represent? All right. All right. So, yeah, like I said, this question's mainly for Ben, but you're talking about meaningful data earlier. On our innovation team here in Irving, we're beginning data analytics projects. So my co-analyst and I were doing a lot of correlation, regression analysis, things of that nature. One problem that we're running into is having staff be prepared to be a data-driven city. A lot of the data we get, the quality's poor, it's not exactly meaningful. My co-analyst and I are spending a lot of time just preparing the data for these type of projects. So I was going to ask you, what type of trainings did you guys provide staff, and what did you guys do to prepare staff to make sure that they have data that is actually going to be useful for undertaking these type of projects?
And all of these cities appear to struggle. In fact, all of our I teams struggle with this. I know you guys have all done this, so.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big challenge. My background's in machine learning and mathematics, so I thought when I came into the city, I'm like, oh, I'm going to do all this great stuff for the data. I know it's going to be messy. And I'm like, wait, no, they don't even have data on some of the stuff. So I do our open data portal, but as you get data sets, try to see how you could use them again as you clean them up. It does require a lot of work. And I think to what Terrance is saying, strategically, get additional data. It might be for one project, but it might help you on other projects. So we have a really good property appraisal data that I actually put out too quickly, and they made the CFO made me take it down off the site because I got a little ahead of the process. But having that data, now we're also using it for property tax exemption and some foreclosure stuff. And the data has evolved, and it's really strong. I would say, we haven't done this. I've wanted to do this. Is teach people how to use Excel, like pivot tables. Pivot tables are, you can do 90% of it you can just do with pivot tables. Yeah, but I mean, and be kind and generous and empathetic. Like someone taught me how to use pivot tables. I was doing a lot of dumb stuff before that, and they're like, hey, you can do it this way. So like, just let people. Let people know that, and like pizza or lunch and learns, just and have the people just slowly train them, I think.
Adria, can you respond to this one too?
So when we first started, we did a data audit we're just like, what are the data sets that exist out there? And we were all new to city government. My whole team, none of us came from the city or government in general. And so we needed to rely on those other people. But people didn't even understand what data was, because we were like 6 months past that request, and we found out that Public Works had a spreadsheet where they rated all of their roads, and we're like, but that's data. We asked for that a long time ago. So first, just I think teaching people what data is really important. The second thing that we try to do now is just get better at counting things, because that seems really simple, but it's not. And not only will that help you to get better data, but it also tells the story better as well. So then you can start to tell people, okay, like we're counting this now, but look, you're not actually filling 1,000 potholes like you think you're filling 10,000 potholes. And that gives them a pat on the back and really helps. The other thing that gets back to like the Excel usage, and you guys all might be aware of this already, but so we are launching Excel trainings next month, and we stole all of our Excel trainings from the city of San Francisco. If you go on to their website, they have all of their training materials that you can just poach and use.
Awesome. Okay, we'll go Memphis.
Okay. Mine is more about user research and user design, and how do you connect with people. So I'm new to my team. I'm a design anthropologist, and the question is, I think a lot of people think they're very user-centered, but we're kind of designing for or governing for as opposed to designing with, right? So I'm not from Memphis, I'm from Jamaica originally, so how do I connect with the community? How do I engage with the community? How do I embed? Should I be embedded, or should I, just asking, how do I do that? Or if you have any suggestions there.
Who wants to take that? Terrance? Okay.
So I would say definitely embed. When I first joined our team, we kind of only dealt with the people that we really wanted to deal with. And so, you only get what you really get, right? And so for us, it was all about first identifying who has your larger networks. So we can't get everybody, but who are the people that have very large networks? How do I get to that person? And how can I get that person, build trust with that person to link me to the next person? Then the next thing would be when we started realizing that a lot of people, they wanted to be a part of the collective us. So we needed to define that us. And then how do I get in the center of the us? And how do I identify the people on the fringes? And what's important to them? Because if we can create things for people on the fringes, then we will satisfy the middle. And so for us, we have mandated time in our office, about 4 hours a day. We spend time in the community, not everyone together. I might go to Maysville, and Jason may go to West Mobile, and Johnny might go to South Mobile. Because we want to make sure that we are spreading ourselves as far as possible, and that we're bringing those connections back to the table at a rapid rate, so that when we start talking, we know who to bring to the table, when to bring them to the table, what they feel like, who's bound to have problems in the community that we're not aware of. And then so once we start seeing, once we know that we messed up and we see people protesting across the street, we also go back and we take pictures and videos of the people, of the protesters. We compile a list of those names after we go back to the community and show them, and then we invite those loudest voices back to the room to figure out, where we're going wrong. So I would say definitely embed. We may spend too much time out in the field embedding ourselves, but I think that is the most important.
And I'll just add, because I think you're totally right, as the words design and the approach of using human-centered design in cities continues to spread, I think there's key moments where mistakes can get made. And I think doing rigorous qualitative research is one of them. People tend to say, I went and talked to some people, so I just did design. Well, no, actually, that's not true. And there's a real rigor to doing qualitative research. And so one recommendation I would also have, I totally agree with everything Terrance said about embedding, because that is the essence of design, is to also bring key stakeholders with you into the field. And so that you, as an expert in doing qualitative research, they sit and listen to you doing the interview, and they start to watch the difference between how they conduct an interview and how you might. And you'll find that they tend to get really excited of like, how do I learn how to do this better, right? And so becoming a teacher by showing, I think, can be a really powerful tool for you to use. Mike, did you have, yeah. Tell us who you are.
Mike Sarasti, City of Miami. So you've talked a lot about all these great successes, and you have all done such impressive things. We certainly watch and look for inspiration in what you do all the time. I think you're all amazing. Since there's so many innovation practitioners in this room, though, and because this work can sometimes be a little bit amorphous, how do you personally deal with the dark times? Like when people are saying that your work is a bunch of BS, or that the politics don't quite align, or there's a new manager and they totally, want to do things not the way that you're doing them. So I'm super curious about that.
Terrance, are you taking that one too? Who wants to do it?
So quickly, the dark times. We have definitely dealt with some dark times. One day we were riding high. We were killing blight. We were saving the city. I went to lunch and I came back and we had no budget. So the city council struck out with budget. So imagine the terror in my eyes when I came back and I said, listen, I can't have this. I just came back from City Lab and they just recognized me as being one of the innovators to watch, and the whole team is amazing and you struck out with budget. Doesn't matter, because you know why? We don't know what you do and you're not an essential department. And so for what we did though, we rallied around each other. We went back and we told better stories of our work to the people who really cared about us, and the people who didn't know what we were doing. We displayed that work to them in dramatic fashion by having them over for drinks at the office or going out to them and showing them the work. And so we built a coalition of people who really cared to get us out of that slump. Another thing that we did was, though, to go out and find the people who fund the people who defunded us. So so that's important, because you want to ensure that you have this extra time. And so while we have this extra time, we're coming up on the next budget cycle. I want to know who are the people who make the decisions to fund the people who are going to be voting on our money. And so we went out and displayed our work to them, and they were like, oh, this is amazing. How could they have ever cut this? And so then they go back to the people and say, hey, look, we can't have this happen. And these guys are the reason why we're able to make the money to fund you guys. And so then that also helps us. So it changes from like just being down on people looking at us, because before we were great, and then people saw us as not being as great. They didn't speak to us on our way to the parking decks. They didn't invite us to lunch anymore. We didn't get invited to parties, so we started throwing our own parties. But we invited parties and brought citizens in. So if you're gonna have a party, do some work, and also take great pictures of those citizens smiling who had the major issues across the street. Now they're over there with you and they're smiling, and this whole fear of missing out takes control, and now everybody's kind of shifting back to your side.
Oh. I don't think I can top that.
I would also say networks. I'm so lucky. Bloomberg has convened a lot of people. I know a lot of people in this room. This is like third or fourth time I get to hang out with these amazing people, and we have director calls or calls when it's dark times. It's a very unique job sometimes, so just being able to talk to someone, reach out. Also, everyone's doing amazing work, and they're super generous with their solutions and time, so that's another way on the dark times. I think Hannah had a good thing on trying to explain the work simply, because I think another thing Terrance is mentioning is people don't know what you're doing, and when you're using kind of these we're ideating and we're doing all this synthesizing, which is how you start talking and is valuable. But people are like, yeah, we can cut that. We were fine without ideating and synthesizing before. So yeah, trying to explain that you're problem solving and showing the wins, and I think showing happy citizens helps too.
Great. Other questions? We have like 9 minutes. Great. Okay. Oh, yes! Teamwork. Thank you.
Jamie from Baytown. Do you have any recommendations for community engagement training, ideation, brainstorming sessions that were successful?
Like smart methodologies or like?
Yes.
So journey mapping, I know we're trying to get away from the buzzwords, but that's been one that's been really helpful because there are so many steps of a process that you don't actually think of. So if those of you who aren't familiar with journey mapping, you have a variety of kind of different things that you measure over a period of time. So on the top row, you actually kind of measure the actual physical steps of the journey. And I'll just give you like a quick example. We in Syracuse, it's very snowy there, and so we were trying to figure out how we had a couple of fatalities after a snow event because people were walking in the street. So we wanted to start to evaluate how do we deal with snowy sidewalks. And so we actually took this activity to high school students, and we asked them to map the journey from home to school. And so to some degree, that was actually, the first row was actually things like, I walk out of my house, I turn left on this street, and you had the physical journey. But then you also asked them to map like pain points. So like maybe even physical pain points, like, oh, I stepped in slush and like now my feet are wet. And then they have to map their emotions. And by doing all these different things, I don't remember all the criteria that we kind of keep on the y-axis, but we were able to see that, hey, actually, one of the challenges that is part of this is that it's a problem with the local buses. It's not, we still have problems that people aren't shoveling their sidewalks, but we never would have gotten to a point where like, oh, well, the bus that is right outside of your house that you could take from school doesn't really operate during the appropriate hours to get you to school. So you're just able to kind of uncover things. And then my favorite, most recent technique that we used, and this was specifically related to eviction, which I think we kind of created. I don't even think I have seen this elsewhere. Maybe it exists, but we created actually a timeline of the eviction process. And so we actually told the story. We created a persona. So a fake person, her name was Jada. She was 8 years old, and it was telling the story of her family getting evicted. That timeline, we then asked participants in our ideation sessions to actually walk through the timeline and just respond to the different steps. And so that could be, typically we're asking for ideas where it was like, okay, in this particular step, like what could an intervention be, and actually kind of plot those along the time. So that's my new favorite kind of ideation method, is actually looking at a process and going through it step by step and coming up with ideas. Do you have favorites?
So my favorite is definitely process mapping, but affinity mapping, because it allows us to get conflicting views into the room without having massive arguments. So you can only put on your sticky note the amount of words that can fit on your sticky note. And you can't challenge anyone else's sticky note because you don't know what they're writing. And so it gives us a chance to bring many people in the room, the sentient voices, but to also show that we have commonalities amongst each other, even though we don't like each other, we don't look like each other, and we don't want to be around each other. We all want the same thing. And so when we're able to show that on the board at the end of the sessions, you'll be amazed at how people are willing to like look at government in a new way, but also look at their neighbors in a new way, and they're willing to come back and do more and more.
I don't have much. Adria did something that I liked, where she had community meetings, but she had like separate sections. So she was able to, the people that wanted to rant, she had a special workstation they could go to, and that, yeah, actually.
It was the ranting station.
You should. I think that's really useful. Just
Sure.
really quickly.
So in trying to solve snow, we had different stations where we asked people a bunch of, there were targeted questions, there was kind of like a magic wand station, there were a bunch of things. But then we realized that people were going to come to this meeting really angry. And this was one of the first times that I was kind of changing the way that public meetings were done. And so, people were coming a half hour early, and they're like, when's the mayor getting here? I want to sign up. I want to be the first person. And we politely said, well, actually, we have this special booth over here. It was actually called venting, not ranting. Yeah. It was the venting station. So we're like, and we identified two wonderful human beings that were not me, who had to, who were wonderful enough to stand there, and they had wonderful customer service skills and listened to the people. And all of the people who went there, like they came in, they were mad, and they were ready to let somebody have it. And then, we were like, okay, is there anything, like, you can stay for the, and they're like, you know what, this was wonderful, thank you so much. So if that's like if I could give you one giant takeaway, like have in your public meetings like a specific place to keep the angry people, it's really helpful.
All right, let's do one last question. All right. Tell us who you are. Thanks.
Hi, Roger Karen with Oracle. Adria and Terrance, you mentioned along the way after you've identified projects that you hit challenges with permitting. Can you dig a little bit deeper and tell us a little bit more about what those challenges were, and how you overcame them? Yeah, you mentioned permitting, and Terrance, you had a very colorful story about permitting.
Every city's got to do it.
So we're just jumping into permitting right now. We've been kind of dabbling in it. I won't go and I'll let Terrance do most of the question, but to some degree, there's a lot of process changes that can be made where I think, honestly, if we just did a quick decision tree, like this is how you respond in this situation, that will solve a lot of our problems. But then we're still in the investigative phase, so I will have to report back to you on that.
So we realized that we had a lot of kingdom building within the department. It was fragmented at some point. So you had permitting over here, inspections over here, planning over here, zoning over here, and then engineering was never mentioned. And so when the information just lies in someone's head, they can create whatever rules they want to create for the citizen based on if they like you or not. And so when we came in, we realized that currently all of you guys touch a project, but you don't talk to each other. So let's consolidate this and let's prevent that. Let's also start looking at the timelines and start looking at timelines for projects. And we realized that if you knew the mayor or you knew someone in the department, your timeline went faster in certain sections. And so we realized that that couldn't be a thing either. And so we went out and spoke with the people who had this preferential treatment, and they also disagreed with having preferential treatment because they can't always be the person to show up. And so when they send their partner who shows up, he's not getting the same treatment, so the project is slowed down. We also realized that that they weren't putting information in the system the same way. So when we talk about data, it was all bad because these guys are putting it in a certain way, these guys are putting it in a certain way, and we're counting our times differently. So this person may say, hey, look, we're going to count it from entry to issuance. And then someone says, well, no, we need to count it from the time it's dropped off to the time it's issued. And so when you go back and you try to create a report, it is horrible. And so that's one of the first things we had to kind of start consolidating that. And so I say for 2 years later, we just got to a point where we're able to have this digital dashboard that everyone can see. And now everyone knows that the mayor has access to this dashboard. And so when they show up to the meetings, they're all gauging each other on the same timeline because they know that he's expecting it to be this one way. And then the next way was that the next issue that we ran into was that the frontline staff members, I think Brendan said, that the people that are closest to the problem know how to solve the problem, but they're also the people that are furthest from the power. And so one of the things that we had to go and do, we had to go back and speak with the mayor on how do we change the meetings. So he was having 30-minute meetings once a week. And so we changed those 30-minute meetings to be in 1 hour and 30 minutes every 2 months. But with that, though, they had all the data spread out across the dashboards. And so he was gauging them based on that again. And they can only come and speak with the mayor if they had conducted 4 meetings with frontline staff members, 2 meetings with mid-level staff members, and then it has to come to the top. So that way we ensure that information is going up and then back down to the people. So now they understand exactly what the mayor wants. And so those are all the issues that we found in permitting inspections. And so now we're realizing that engineering has to fold into that because we want you to come in the office and you have a one-stop shop. Currently, our layout doesn't allow for that to happen. But you can come to one desk and then all the people move around to solve your problem versus you having to go from 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, then back to 2. So that's kind of where we are.
All right, well, please join me in thanking our wonderful panelists today. Thanks for staying awake with us, asking great questions, and definitely grab us and enjoy the rest of the day. But grab us if you want to chat. Thanks.
Oh, yeah, we're good. Then we're going to lunch after this, so you can go ahead and lunch will be in the hallway.